Hello, everybody. This is an episode today with Amy Wallace, who I am very excited to be interviewing, and I'll let her give you just a really brief overview of her story. We're going to be diving into her, getting cancer at the age of 18, and all of these different things that have led to who she is today. But I'll let you, Amy, just give us a really brief overview of your story, and then we'll dive into the specifics of it.
Okay, well, actually, I got pregnant with twins at 18, my senior year in high school,
Wow.
and the cancer came later when I was 20. They were a year and a half old.
Mm.
Um, so I would say my journey actually started with the pregnancy. I remember waking up one day and just knowing I was pregnant. And it very quickly turned into teachers and other people at the school rallying around me having an abortion because pregnancy didn't seem like a smart idea for me in their opinion. And I knew I was pregnant on purpose. I had
Mm.
no idea why I was not in a healthy relationship. I was a child, but I knew that I was having that baby. I was pregnant on purpose. On birth control, all the things. It wasn't an accident.
Wow.
So yeah, so I was like, no, this is on purpose. They sent me to a high risk doctor, actually, I think to scare me, but they didn't
Really?
do their, yeah, it was really interesting. They kept, because he partied a lot. So they kept
This is
telling me
the
that,
his dad?
yeah, they kept
Okay.
telling me that the baby was going to have problems because, so it did kind of scare me. And they sent me to this doctor, again, I think to scare me, but they didn't do their homework. She's a high risk pregnancy doctor and very pro life. So she had a conversation with me. It was a great conversation. She said, "You don't need to be with me. I'm going to give you a referral to another doctor." And I said, "Okay." And as I was leaving her office, she said, "Amy, do you want to see your baby?" And I said, "No, like my parents don't even know I'm pregnant yet. I have no money. I don't have health insurance. I can't pay you for anything. Like I can't do that." And she was like, "I'm not asking for anything other than, do you want to see your baby?" And I said, "For free?" And she said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I want to see my baby." And I thought I was probably 3 months pregnant because we had broken up and, whatever.
Wow.
So we went in to do the ultrasound and she was having issue with the ultrasound. And then she said, "We're going to have to do a vaginal ultrasound," which I did not know what that was at the time. There's something I need to look a little closer at. I'm likely going to take that referral away from you. So then immediately I get scared thinking, oh my gosh, there is something wrong with my baby. And she said something
Wow.
about two sacs, and I thought there was something growing on my baby's head. And so we do this vaginal ultrasound. She said, "Yeah, I'm going to keep you. I want you to get dressed and come to my office. You've got two sacs." And I was like, "What is two sacs?" She was like, "There's two babies in there and you're nowhere close to 3 months pregnant. You're about 5 weeks pregnant." And I
Wow.
was like, "What? Two babies? No." So she took me in there, and I was in high school and really underweight and all those things. And so she gave me the conversation about most people at this stage don't even know they're pregnant with twins. And I was really underweight. So to not expect to have both of them, that many people will miscarry a baby and never even know they were pregnant with twins.
Oh my god.
So she was like, "I don't want you to expect to have both of them, but I am going to watch you closely, blah, blah, blah." And I said to her, "Dr. Dix, when I got here, I told you I was pregnant with a baby and I was going to have that baby. You're telling me I'm pregnant with two. I'm telling you I'm going to have two." So I did. I, sorry, Ashley, you're
I'm
going to
gonna
ask me
pause you
something.
for a moment because I just realized that I did not plug in my laptop and that I need to grab my charger from behind me
Okay.
so it doesn't hit this tab. Give me just a second.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. This has definitely happened on like Zoom calls before, but might be the first on an interview. But you know what? I'd rather see that notification and fix it now than have it shut us down and be like, what happened?
Yeah. Or an hour in and not even realize that it wasn't recording.
Oh my
That would
goodness.
be funny.
Okay, we're plugged in now. We're plugged in.
Okay.
Okay. I actually want to rewind you like to before the pregnancy because I think I'm just like kind of curious like about your life and your younger years and like what your house was like growing up because you didn't go and
Mm.
like share it with your family right away. So what was it like growing up for you?
So my family was, I mean, I'm sure there's worse families, but my family was crazy. My parents divorced when I was 7, and they both kind of went into their opposite directions. And I was the youngest and just kind of flailed around. I
Yeah.
lived in various places growing up. I lived with friends. I lived with my sister. I just, I lived with my cousins in Texas. I lived, just kind of
Yeah.
wherever.
What state did you grow up in?
Missouri.
Missouri. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that
And
where
I
you are
was,
now as well? Or
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I was definitely that kid that if my dad made me mad, I went to live with my mom. If my mom made me mad, I went back to my dad's. Like there was very little stability. And
Yeah.
that may sound appealing, but really what I wanted someone to do was to say, no, you're staying here. Like I wanted
Mm,
someone to dig their feet in and say, this is what's best for you. You're going to do this. And so I still to this day do not like to be told what to do. I do not want to be controlled. But in truth, I really want someone to say, no, this is what I do need that and desire that in some ways, but I
yeah.
will resist it always initially.
And with this relationship, the dad of your twins,
Uh-huh.
when and how did that come about?
So we met in high school. He was trouble, trouble, trouble. He was super cute. And the first time I saw him was in an earth science class, and I was like, holy moly. I ended up asking him to a school dance. And I did it because a girl that I didn't like asked him to the same school dance, like in front of my locker in the hallway. And just to be mean to her, I was like, no, no, you're going with me. And that was the first words I ever said to him.
That's
So
hilarious.
yeah, but I had a history like from growing up. I had a pattern that I had to earn love. So
Mm,
any relationship that I was in, it was like, what can I do for you? Who can I be for you? How can I, position myself to be valuable to you so that you will love me? Like
yes.
that's how I showed up in relationships.
I think that's probably a lot of people can relate to that, especially like if it's teens and into 20s. I think for some people it might go on even longer than that, but I think
Yeah,
that's a very common thing, right? And
yeah.
so
Hmm.
how did that influence the kind of relationship that the two of you had? I mean,
Uh,
obviously you were kids, but you know.
yeah, well, we were kids, and I it was all about him, really from the beginning. It was all about his needs, it was all about what he wanted. It was, just everything revolved around him for the entirety of the relationship, really. Um, Getting pregnant and having the babies was the
Yeah.
first time that I did not give him what he wanted.
Wow. So how long did you get pregnant? Like after you two had started dating?
Almost 2 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. And you were saying that it was just very toxic. You ended up leaving him before you found out that you were pregnant. Was there like a final thing that happened, or was it just kind of just a bunch of nonsense?
It
You're
was
like,
just
I'm out.
always he'd break up with me so that he could hang out with someone else on the weekends and then get back with me on Monday. You
Oh
know,
my
that
god.
that kind of, thing. We actually my junior year I got an apartment. He couldn't get an apartment on his own. So I got us an
In high
apartment.
school.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness.
He'd already graduated and just wasn't responsible enough to get an apartment. So I worked and went to school and I got us an apartment, and he actually lived in that apartment. I left him with the apartment and was living with my dad when I got pregnant.
Wow.
So yeah, crazy.
So fast
It's funny
forward
to think that.
to finding out that you have 2 babies, right? Like
Yeah.
and so it's interesting, like, to be thinking of you at 18 years old to just have this knowing. Was that common for you at the time, or was that just a very different kind of experience that you haven't had before?
If I look back, it was common for
Yeah.
me. But something that I didn't really understand or pay much attention to, but there were things that I knew. There were things that I just knew, and there was no convincing me otherwise. I just knew. And that was particularly one of those things. I knew that this was no accident. This was totally on purpose. It was a God thing, which, and I would say that, and people would say, God did not, this has nothing to do with God. God does not want you to be pregnant. And I was like, well, it's divine. It's whatever it is. It's on purpose. And I don't know what the purpose is today, but one of these days I'm going to know why I'm pregnant right now. And so I stayed
Wow.
with that. I literally stayed with that. And it was interesting because Eric's mom, I told everyone I was pregnant, and everyone asked me, like, when I say everyone, like parents
Yeah.
asked me, are you going to have the baby? Have you considered options? And, I would say, I've considered all the options. I am going to have the baby. And actually, there's two of them, and people would say, oh, yeah, it's just like you couldn't have one baby. You have to have two, that kind of thing. Um,
So, what was it like having to share that with family, with parents, with someone that you had broken up with?
Super scary. I actually left a note on Eric's at that apartment. I left a note on the door of that apartment, um, and just said something about twins. Do twins run in your family? And they do now. And I said, you might want to come over and chat with me because, we didn't have cell phones at the time. So he
Right.
came over to my house and he was like, I have to ask you two questions. First of all, are they mine? And second of all, would you consider having an abortion? And of
Wow.
course, I was like, yes, they're yours. And no, I won't consider having an abortion. Which he
Wow.
already knew. But, that's one thing before we had sex. I said, I want you to know I will not have an abortion. It won't happen. Um,
Right.
so he was like, okay, that was a chance he was willing to take
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
moment.
I mean, like, I think that's a really, really rare thing for you to be like communicating at that level at 18
Yeah.
and then being very clear about things. Like, so good on you for that. Like, what was it like being like pregnant in high school and being like a teenager? And like, I mean, how I can only imagine.
So it's funny because I was the leader of that era, right? Like now people are pregnant in high school all the time, but at the time that was 34 years ago. People didn't come to school pregnant. So I
Wow.
remember my best friend was like, we're not telling anyone. We're just never going to tell anyone. I was like, Candy, I'm pregnant with
Oh
twins. People are going to notice that
my goodness.
people are going to know. I didn't care. Like I was just like
Really?
I didn't. I was like, the thing is, I don't know a
Wow.
virgin. I didn't know a virgin. I was not friends with anyone who was a virgin. So there was no one in that I knew that could judge my behavior.
Right.
I just got pregnant. We were all doing the act. I just got caught. So
And had
that's
decided to
how,
keep the babies.
yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
looked at it. So that didn't phase me.
That to me, it's just I just feel like I know it since it's your experience, you're like, "Oh, everyone's like that." But I feel like, wow, like there just seemed like there was some kind of inner maturity or something there that I just don't feel like you'd often see at someone that
Well,
age.
there was that
So, interesting.
knowing. There was that thing. I mean, I literally woke up, Ashley, and it was like, you're pregnant. And I was like, wait, what? I'm not getting ready for school. And it was just like this, you're pregnant, go take a test. And I just kept following these voices, that
Wow.
I was just like, okay, I stopped at this place called Crisis Pregnancy Center, and everybody knew about Crisis Pregnancy Center around here. You go there, and if you're pregnant, they take you into this back room and they show you these horrific videos of abortion to get you to not take
Oh,
not to not.
wow.
And I knew that. So I'd already decided if they say yes, I'm going to tell them I'm engaged and I'm super happy about it and I'm going to run out the door. But
Hmm.
it was a free pregnancy test, and my aunts ran Planned Parenthood. So I
Oh,
couldn't go to
wow.
Planned Parenthood because all of my family members worked there. So that
Wow.
wasn't where I was going.
Huh.
So I went to Crisis Pregnancy Center and on my way to school that morning. And of course, they said, you're pregnant. And they started to take me into this room. And I was like, oh, my husband's going to be so excited. I'm a child. My husband's going to be so excited. And I take off running. So there was no stopping me. I was out the door. Um, But it was the weirdest thing. I really truly had this calm about me that I knew I was pregnant on purpose. And I knew the reason would be revealed to me.
Yeah. And so let's fast forward to like the time when you're about to give birth to twins. Like what was did you have a support system? Like cuz
So,
that's a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah, it was not quite that easy of about to give birth. So Eric's mother was like, "Go pack all your belongings. You're moving in with me." So with us, his family, they had a
Mhm.
nice big home. I had the upper level of their house, and she was like, "We will take care of you. You're moving in here. You're pregnant with my grandbabies. I will take care of you personally." And I
Wow.
did. I moved in with them, and she took care of me. I went into labor at 18 weeks. So
Wow.
I got put into the hospital on an IV to keep me from having those babies from 18 weeks to 32 weeks when I finally delivered.
You were in the hospital.
Yeah, in a
Wow.
labor and delivery room for
Wow.
3 months. Yeah,
Wow. Oh
no
my god.
window. No, I
What
didn't
was
see the
that
light
time
of
like?
day. It was like a long time. It was like a really long time. I remember Judy was my nurse. She was my daytime nurse, and we became really close. And again, it was one of those, um, I was okay. People would come visit me. It's what I had to do to have healthy babies. And so I did whatever I had to do to have healthy babies. And Dr. Dix used to say, "I wish I could just wheel you around this floor so that you could meet all the mothers that are way older than you that will not listen to me and do the things that I'm asking. You're a child and you never give me any grief. You just do whatever you need to do for the health of your babies." And she was like, "I deal with these grown women that will not do what I ask." And I'd be like,
Wow.
"Well, maybe it's because I'm a child. I don't know." I don't know. I'm
Oh
not
my
sure.
goodness. And so, I mean, I think having a baby, a newborn in itself is very challenging. So
Hmm.
then you come home with 2 newborns
Hmm.
at
Yeah.
18, and it sounds like you had a support system, like, with Eric's mom, but what was the initial, months like adjusting to motherhood?
Crazy. So they were in the hospital for a month. So I went home without them for the first month. So that was a bit of an adjustment of just going, I was at the hospital every day. And so just waiting, preparing for them to get there. And then they got home and it was just, it was kind of nice because the NICU had them on a schedule. So they slept really
Wow.
well. They were on a schedule. I breastfed them. So, I don't know anything else. I didn't know any I do now. I have a single baby now, but I did not know anything else at the time. So my sister had a baby 4 months before me. And so she would be like, "I just don't understand. Like, I think about how hard this is with one baby and I'm grown and have a husband. Like, I don't understand how you're doing it." I'm like, "Well,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know anything else. So I just, all I know is both arms are full or whatever." So I don't know what it's like to not do it that way. So it was
Wow.
not easy, but my girls were good and they were fair. They were easy babies. They slept well. They did everything at the same. They're identical. And they
Wow.
did everything at the same time. They both had poopy diapers at the exact same time. They slept at the exact same time. I mean, they lost their teeth at the exact same time. They did everything at the exact same time.
It's almost
So
like the divine was trying to really make this, as smooth as possible for you,
yeah,
right?
thank goodness, because nothing else was going smoothly.
Um,
Nothing else
yeah,
was.
what else was going on?
Well, Eric did, there came a time in the early on while pregnant that finally one person kind of pushed against me having the babies and really went for it, which was my sister. She thought I was going to ruin my life
Is
forever if
this
I
the
had the
sister that
babies.
you were talking about that had the baby?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So while I was pregnant, she was just devastated. Of course, she was pregnant and she was married, and, she's 7 years older than me. And she just could see that my life was going to be so hard. And so Eric also did not want me to have them. And so it was really bad. He would do really crazy things to get me to not have the babies. And I would just be like, I'm committed, like this is futile. I'm having the babies.
Yeah.
So much so that he got kicked out of the hospital and was not allowed back in the hospital.
Wow.
Because he'd come in the middle of the night drunk and, starting
Oh,
fights with me. And, so he got kicked out and then he joined the military. So he wasn't even here when I
mm. Sounds
had
like
them.
you were in the hospital for your protection in some ways because,
Yeah.
yeah, which is good. Now that hearing all this, wow.
It's probably part of why I went into labor so early. You go into labor early with twins. That's historically something that happens anyway. And I was really underweight. So, she had mentioned that to be a problem, but there was a lot of stress. As much as I tried to keep it under wraps, there was a lot of stress going on. So, yeah, I definitely think being in the hospital was a protective measure for me. And so, yeah, that was good. And the girls. It was
Wow.
protection for all three of us. So,
And so I know that you said they were about a year and a half old when
mhm.
so was there some kind of things you were noticing with your health? Like how did this cancer diagnosis come about?
So, Eric and I actually got married like crazy.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, whatever. I wanted to keep my family together, though.
Yeah.
So we got married and separated. And I was living with my dad, and I was like, I'm going to college. So I was in school, and there was really nothing that I could speak of except for one day I took my girls to my cousins that she was keeping him for a day, and it was a beautiful spring day, and I was driving I was going to college algebra, and I was singing in the car, and I did this as I was singing to feel my voice box vibrate, and when I did, I noticed there was a lump on my collarbone. So I
Wow.
was like, oh, what is that? And I had been sweating profusely at night when I was sleeping, and we didn't have an air conditioner. So I was like, I bet you I have a swollen sweat gland, which is why I'm sweating so bad. So I was like, do you guys see this thing? And so everybody could see it. It looked like a golf ball sitting right on top of my collarbone. And it was like one day it's there, the next day, I mean, one day it's not, the next day it's there, just out of
Wow.
nowhere. So I
Wow.
showed it to my mom, and she was like, if that's not gone in a week, I want you to go to the doctor and have it checked. So I was like, okay, I didn't have a doctor. So I had to get a doctor. I went to the doctor, and he started asking me questions. He said, have you lost a lot of weight without really trying in the last, 6 months to a year? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, I have twins that are a year and a half old. I've lost a lot of weight in the last year.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay. He was like, well, are you extra tired or? And I was like, yeah, I have twins that are a year and a half old, and I'm taking 15 hours in college, and yeah, I'm tired. And
Right. Yeah.
um, so then he was like, well, have you been really sick lately? Anything running a fever? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, it's not mono. And he was like, do you have a cat? And I was like, nope, no cats. And he was like, then it's not cat scratch fever. And I was like, okay. And he's like, let me ask you this. Have you been sweating at night, like an enormous amount of sweat at night? And I was like, yes, that is it. I was like, so bad, like I have to change the sheets, swimming in sweat at night.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I knew it was going to be a swollen sweat gland or something that wasn't functioning properly. And he was like, unfortunately, no, I don't think that's what it is. He was like, that's final stages of Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I was like, oh, well, I knew what that was because my sister's best friend had Hodgkin's lymphoma growing up, and he actually died from adverse effects on his heart from the treatments when he
Wow.
was 25. So
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay. So he had me in surgery. That was a Friday. He had me in surgery that Tuesday to have a biopsy on it to see what it was. And so they went into surgery and they came out and told my parents they were going to remove that and send it off for biopsy. And instead, when they opened it up, they said what looked like a golf ball sitting on my collarbone was actually the size of a cantaloupe, and they couldn't remove it because it was attached to so many things in my chest cavity and was so close to the main arteries of my heart that they couldn't touch it. So at that time, they were like, probably make some memories with your daughter, that she's probably not got much time left, her body is pretty well covered in cancer.
Yeah.
So then just a litany of tests, that it just one test after another test after another test.
What were you feeling at this time? I feel like this is so much to take on at 20 years old, a new mom.
So I think I've been processing, it's interesting because I've been processing those feelings more in the last year than maybe I even did then. And there was probably a time I did then, but so much fear and sadness and immediate recognition of this is why I was pregnant. This is the
Yeah.
purpose. So there were moments that, um, well, there was fear, there was determination, there was denial, there were all those things.
So were you thinking that you were pregnant so that you could experience that, and you were like, because this was gonna happen and that you needed to get pregnant younger? Like, what do you mean by that?
So both that and also determination to live.
Ah,
They
got
gave
it.
me purpose to stay alive because without
Mhm.
them, without them, I probably wouldn't have fought that fight. I wouldn't have fought that fight without
Wow.
the girls.
Wow.
But there was, there was a moment. So we'll just skip to. Um, there was a moment in the process. We won't skip to. I don't want to skip that. So I had an amazing doctor. We had to go to 7 different oncologists to find somebody who would treat me.
Wow.
On doctor number 7, he said, "Yes, I'll treat you." All the rest of them said, "There's really not much we can do. Like we're
Really?
just, yeah." They're like
Wow.
the amount of cancer, you know, it's not much we're going to be able to do to help her. We're not experts in this. We're not going to be able to help her.
And the 7th one, what was different about them or what they were willing to do?
Everything about him is different. Like wow, ahead of his time in this world. But he said, "Sure, I'll take this on. If you're going to get cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma is a good one to have." And he said, "I will give you enough medicine to kill you, and you will decide if you want to live or die."
Wow.
And I was like, okay, well, I decided, I'm going to live or whatever. I was young and there was a lot happening and a lot happening. And but I was like, okay, well, then I can do this. And, early on, the doctors, I caught my sister and my dad interfering with doctor calls. So like the doctors rang, it was back in the time when you had phones all over your house with
Yeah.
long cords kind of thing. The doctor's office had called and they intercepted the call and they were taking the information and then telling me what they thought I needed to hear, what they thought I could handle hearing and not the full
Wow.
picture.
With the
So
intention of, like, protecting you? Is that what
protecting
they
me.
they thought?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
So by the time we got to Dr. Morgan, I was like, listen, with my whole family in the room, I was like, listen, I'm in charge. So you talk to me first. You tell me everything. I will decide what everybody else needs to hear. It's not
Wow.
the other way around. So if someone else answers the phone, you talk to me. And
Wow.
he was like, okay. If you could see his face, the way he would just lean back on that desk and look at me and smile, I'm this young girl in here, just kind of feisty and bossy, and that's how it was going to be. And he was so great. And so he was like, okay, Amy, but your attitude's going to determine if you live or die. Like I'll give you the medicine, you do what it takes to stay alive. And I said, okay. And so that was our deal.
Wow.
So I did chemo twice a week, every Thursday and Friday for 5 hours a day.
Wow.
And I would go in there. And so I would do that chemo. And then the next week I'd go in an hour early and we'd do x-rays in my chest because my chest was completely covered, like completely covered with cancer. So that's where they would x-ray to see where those tumors, that's what they would gauge every week. So every week when he would come in there, he would have the results of those x-rays and he would put them on that little screen. And before he would turn the light on, he would say either, looks like you had a really great week, or he would say, so looks like you have some things you're struggling with. Do you want to talk about them?
Wow.
And he would always know one way or the other if I'd had a great week or not great week. And he'd always want to talk about it either way. So then he would turn that light on and he would say, this is how your tumors have shrank, or this is how they've grown, or we didn't get any shrinkage this week. And it was always related to the week I'd had, if it was a good week or a bad week.
Wow.
So
Oh, wow. And so he seemed to understand and be kind of almost pointing you towards that connection to your
a
emotional.
hundred,
Wow.
a
Wow. That
hundred percent.
I understand what you're saying about being ahead of his time. And so
Yeah.
did that kind of shift like how you went through it? Like because he was approaching it like that?
100%, yeah. I mean, otherwise I would have just gone through it. Like, and that was my attitude. At first I was like, just give me the medicine, whatever. I'll just deal with it. I just deal with whatever I get dealt. Like I've always dealt with whatever I got dealt. Like
Yeah.
just give it to me. I can deal with it. But he would be like, no, you're in charge of it. Like I'll give you the medicine and likely kill you with it. You've got to really want to live. Like I'm giving you so much medicine, I might kill you. You've got to want to live. And so there was a point, and also I'm not telling you his name on purpose because of this, but there was a point in that not too far in that I couldn't raise my head. Like I was so sick. Like the illness of that chemo and even the anti-nausea medication at the time would make me violently ill. And they knew it. They were like, this will make you violently ill. If you can keep it down, it will keep you from throwing up. But if you can't, it's going to make you violently ill. So it was awful. But I remember one time my mom took me in and she was like, you have to help her. Like we can't do anything. She can't raise her head. She can't move her arms. Like you have to do something. And he said, there's not another medication I can give her. He was like, she's so medicated. There's literally nothing else I can give her. And he said, are you open to alternatives? And she was like, what do you mean? And he was like, there's a medication that you can buy in a bag. They sell it by the ounce or the quarter ounce. He was like, I can't call it by name. I can't recommend you buy it. You can smoke it. He was like, if you're not opposed to it, it could save her life. And she was
Wow.
like, are you talking about pot? And he was like, I won't.
He's like, I can't say either way.
Yeah. And he was like, the truth is I could get it for her, but we'll be done with this or she'll be dead by the time I can get through the government's red tape of helping her. He was like, but if you're not opposed to it, it will help her. And she said, I have an entire drawer full of it at my office. She was like, you have no idea the people that have been bringing it to me saying, give this to Amy, it will help her. And she was like, I just
Wow.
refuse to give it. My
Wow.
friends had been saying, you've got to smoke weed. You got to smoke weed. And I'm like, you guys are all just potheads. I'm not smoking weed.
Ah,
I had never smoked weed. So I was like, no way am I doing it.
oh my
So,
goodness. And so,
yeah.
well, I think there was probably such a stereotype with your generation as well. And also sometimes based on who you know that's doing it is probably going to really shade the
I
opinion,
was
right?
scared. I never wanted to do anything wrong. I never wanted to get in trouble. I was definitely the rule follower, which is crazy. I was pregnant in high school. Like my sister would be like, "Oh, you didn't follow any rules." But I
Ah,
I was the DD. I didn't drink. Like when I went to see that
wow.
doctor when I was pregnant, she was like, "Do you drink?" And I was like, "I drank 3 beers earlier in the school year one time at a party." And she was like, "You're good. Like you're going to be okay." So, I just was scared. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
talk about change my life.
Yeah, what
Wow.
happened once you started to utilize it?
I never threw up again. We saved about $1,500 a month in prescription medications. I didn't take another pain medication.
Wow.
I did not throw up not one more time. So he told me exactly how to use it, for that purpose, and I could use it any way I wanted to, but specifically for that, I was to smoke on my way to my doctor's appointments. Then I would do my x-rays, go back out to the parking lot. I would smoke again right before I got the chemo. And then I would get the chemo and I would smoke on my way home. So I literally, there's another piece to the story, but a little bit later, I started dancing on Thursday nights. I would do 5 hours of chemo on Thursday, and then I would go do Texas swing dance Thursday nights. That is a very different experience than before marijuana.
Yeah.
Very different
Wow.
experience. I
You
could
know,
eat. It was crazy.
I think I'm finding like tears coming, and I feel like there's maybe some sense of like what I'm hearing from you, because like it's odd to have had a very different experience, but in my divorce, like dancing and smoking some weed really helped me move through things that I didn't know how I was going to move through. And I did not have cancer in my chest or twin
Yeah.
toddlers, but I guess I'm just crying because in some ways, like it really did feel like my medicine at that point. And I think that there's parts of me that probably held shame of being like, this is just this is a bad thing, or you shouldn't be doing this, or if you were stronger, and so
Yeah.
I guess I'm hearing you, and like in some ways that really that helped me in such big ways, because I think no, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, I think there's times in your life that you're just really not quite sure how to get through it. And I have always felt like it's such a medicine, and depending on the intention for use and why you're utilizing it, I guess that there's just different, yeah, so it's really cool, I guess, to hear
Yeah.
your experience of that. I didn't know that.
I'm sure grateful.
Yeah.
I'm sure grateful for it. And the dancing, wow, that was something. There came a point. So there came a point in this process that, I said I married the girl's dad. Well, he had joined the military, and when I got sick and they classified me as terminal and gave me 3 months to live, the military discharged him because
Wow.
we were married and had two children, and he needed to be responsible for those children. So they discharged him on medical emergency, blah, 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 whatever. So in this process, however, he and my best friend decided that the best thing for them to do was to partner with each other. They would find solace in each other. So they had this affair and decided when
Oh
I
my god.
died, they would raise the girls as their own children and pretend like I never existed, kind of thing. And,
Oh my god.
whatever, that wasn't happening. So, part of me was like, I'll never die just because of that, and part of me was like, I can't take this anymore. I'm sick of it. Like, I don't, and that's when I came to really the purpose of getting pregnant young and having babies is because God knew I wanted to be a mother, and he knew I wasn't going to live long. So he let me have, a taste of what that would be like. And so I got the baby. And so I really came up with what I thought was God telling me this is what it is. So just let go and die. You can die with whatever. It's all going to be okay. Just stop fighting and give
Yeah.
up. And so I went and saw Dr. Morgan and said, I don't want to do this anymore. Nope, I just said kind of his name. I don't want to do this anymore. This is what I've decided. I think I'm supposed to die, blah, blah, blah. And again, he just leaned against that cabinet and kind of smiled and said, well, Amy, you technically should have been dead already, but we've
Wow.
made amazing progress. I'm not ready to give up on you. I don't think that is the plan in any way. I think you're missing the message.
Wow.
He was like, I'll tell you what, I will tell your parents that this isn't working anymore and we will give up on this if you will agree to go see my friend who was a psychiatrist and do whatever he tells you to do for 4 weeks. And I was like, well, I'll decide actually what we're going to do. But I'll entertain that. So, so I did. I went and saw the friend, blah, 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 blah. So I went home that night and I was just irritated because I had already created the plan. I had it worked out, and Dr. Morgan was not doing what I wanted easily. So I was laying on the couch and my girls were watching Winnie the Pooh, and they were sitting on their knees, shoulder to shoulder, like they always did, watching Winnie the Pooh. And I was like, laying on the couch just praying. And I remember I was praying, it was like, all right, look, dude, what do you want me to do? Like, give me a really clear sign. Like, I thought we had this worked out. Like, what is it? Am I supposed to fight this fight? Do I give up and let my sister be their mom? I thought she would be a better mom than me anyway. She's more fit, more capable. And, or am I supposed to be their mom? Am I supposed to keep doing this? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, tell me, make it really loud so I can't argue with what you say. And about that time. Well, right at that time, the girls just turned around and looked at me without making a sound. And it was just like the air just split and I got pinned against the couch. And then
Wow.
they turned back around and continued watching Winnie the Pooh. And it was like directly into my soul. I knew the answer. It
Mhm.
was another one of those knowings. I
Mm.
also knew in that moment that it was okay to not be able to do this on my own, to say, I'm scared. I need to get out of here for a minute. I'm overwhelmed. I can't handle all this. Like, I have to walk away for a second. So that's what I did. I walked away. That psychiatrist checked me into like a hospital where they did addiction, like it was a women's addiction thing. I didn't have addiction issues, but it was kind of the only resource for me at that point. So
Yeah.
um, I
Although
remember
they might not let you use the weed in there, and so that would have
so
been hard.
so funny, Ashley. I was doing radiation at the time, so I didn't need the weed.
Oh,
And I
well,
was
okay.
really only smoking when I did chemo, but I had
Okay.
it in my purse. I just wasn't thinking about it. So when I checked into the hospital, they went through all my things and they found the weed and made me go to NA. I was like,
Oh gosh.
you guys,
You're
come
like, "Do
on.
you even know? Do you even know what I've been through?"
I was like, look, I have no hair on
Come
my head.
on.
Like
Oh my gosh.
I don't need to be in NA. I forgot it was in there. And so anyway, they were convinced that I was
Wow.
an addict. But whatever, that was a whole different story.
Ah, wow. And do you feel like you were able to be gentle on yourself with all this that you were going through and, like, understanding
So
or
yes, the day that I had that meeting with my doctor and I went home and that prayer happened, I'd gotten a package in the mail and it was a Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, which
wow.
I had never heard of before ever. And so I took that book with me to the hospital and I went through that book 100 times, not 100. I probably read that book and did every exercise in that book 4 times. So I, for the first time in my life, loved myself. Like I was able to look in the mirror and love myself.
Wow.
I was gentle
Did
with
you
myself.
did you purchase that or did that book just turn up?
That book just turned up.
Wow.
Yeah. Come to find out it was my mother-in-law sent that book to me,
Wow.
but
And
I
I think
didn't know.
she had a journey of healing cancer in right, I believe as
Yeah.
well, right? Like,
Yeah,
a
she did.
similar story, but I think she was much older than you were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, and so how amazing, like, yeah, it's very much divine how you can see the doctor that you were matched up with and someone sending you this book that you can see really God's workings through all of
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And I do really wanna start, like, making sure we make space for, like, the rise part of this
Hmm.
because I think that really set you up for who you are today, like who you became after that in the world, how your life I'm sure was on a different path. Do you feel like you in that darkness really connected to like more of your light and more of your gifts?
Yeah, that's where working through the book comes in. I mean, that was the first time that I'd ever looked at myself, looked in my eyes, and expressed gratitude or love and appreciation for who I saw reflected back to me. And it took a long time to get there, but I kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And by the time that 4 weeks was over, I was dancing every Thursday night. And I was no longer had any attachment to Eric and what he needed or what he thought or what he cared about or that best friend or any I had healed all of that. I was in love with myself.
Hmm.
The girls and I lived with my dad, and when I got out of that apartment or got out of that hospital, we got our own apartment. I was halfway through my treatment. I still had treatment to do, but I was living on my own with two
Wow.
babies and it just everything changed. So I
Wow.
was in a survival mode to that point. Like I was determined to survive up until that point. And from that moment, when I asked for that sign, when I was like, all right, show me, tell me, and I got that, then I was on a journey to live. And
Wow.
that they're very different experiences, very
Mm,
different. And that's when I was like, what do I want to do? I'm alive today. What do I want to do right now today? What would taste good today? What would feel good today? And that's what I did. And I try to
wow.
remember that still. 32. My girls will be 34 on Friday. Oh, that's tomorrow. Those girls will be 34 tomorrow.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
What perfect timing for this.
Yeah, really. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. So I try to do that today when I start to get wrapped up in my mind, like when I get wrapped up in my business and all of what's overwhelming. I'm like, well, what I have right now is today. What would feel good today? What would be beneficial today? What would taste good today? Where is my joy today?
Yes. Yes. And we were talking before we hit record about the the dancing really like connecting you to like this relationship with yourself and like and I know the hooping was like a really big thing that I would
Yeah.
see you doing. I know that there's the kundalini that you're doing now. Like tell me like how you view like dancing and movement.
Oh, gosh, it's so funny. Just this morning, I said, pay attention to your body. It will talk to you all day long. The challenge is, are you willing to listen and give it what it's asking for? And so in that moment, my body said, yeah, like you never give me bath time anymore. And I would really love to be inside of a hula hoop. So um, it, that connection with your body, like this is the most important home you'll ever have. It's the most important relationship you'll ever have. This connection, this communication, this community and communion you have here with you is a reflection of everything else around you. So you can't have a trusting relationship with someone else if you don't first have a relationship you can count on with yourself. So the big picture is to connect with your body because your body is where your divine lives.
Mm,
So yeah, I have to be in my body. That is where I find my sensuality and my creativity and my peace and my center. If things are going crazy, I can just, I'm feminine and I want to be in my feminine. So just to do some little Sufi grinds, that's why I love my hula hoop because I can get those chakra centers really moving and just get that energy flowing so it's not stagnant and stuck in me. Like I'm
yeah.
lethargic and tired when I'm not moving that energy, when I'm not allowing that flow. So getting into the body and allowing that flow just allows space for expansion.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think that you, with what you do today, because I know that there's been a variety of different twists and turns, and it's kind of like this ever unfolding flower, right? Of all these things that are getting added. Like, I guess I'm curious, how do you feel the experience that you went through, like in with the pregnancy, with the cancer journey, really put you on a path to do what you do today and to be who you are in the world with your business?
I think, it all is so perfectly aligned because I'm really focused on relationships.
Mhm.
And I'm a lover of love. I'm such a sucker for a love story. And I know for a fact that I have to be in love with myself to receive the love that I desire from another person. And if I'm not, I will attract that love that I actually have within that from someone else. And
Yeah.
then it just gets amplified. And that's, I'm not interested in that. So what I'm doing now, so much of it is working with couples and individuals who are looking for that love that they deeply desire and helping them find that within themselves, within their bodies, so that their lovers. So it's all comes together. It all comes from the foundation of where I've been, not having it even in my childhood with my family. Like I was seeking that love and affirmation, and I wanted to be captivating to someone. And it took a lot to get me to that space. So I was like, the person that I needed to be loved and adored by was myself. And when I
Mhm.
was able to fall in love with myself, then everything else in life started to fall into place. And, nothing is one and done.
Right.
It's like any relationship, it takes work and you have to revisit it and come back to it. But
Yes.
finding those tools to do that, to come back to it, to notice when you're off balance and when you're not there, to have those tools in your toolbox to go, oh, I know what, I can get my hula hoop out and turn on some music and spend an
Yeah.
hour and change my life. That,
Yes. You
how
know,
great is that?
I think I'm such a big believer in that myself because I found that like, in even in looking at business, it's like no amount of strategy or figuring things out is ever going to replace what I create after just like dancing and coming from joy, because I do feel like it's like we're raising our frequency so much. We're able to be in the frequency of the solution, of things flowing to us, of time kind of collapsing and just shifting so that and
Yeah.
I know that it sounds like, maybe to somebody that feels like there's no way that's possible, right? Like I'm not in the business of convincing anybody, but I fully see what you're saying is that it's so counterintuitive, but it is so much like a more direct, joyful path to all of that stuff opening up.
Yeah.
And so I just love hearing that that's been your experience too.
Yeah. It's funny because my best friend and I were talking the other day, and she said, the best sex you've ever had in your life, like what would who was that? And I was like, oh, it's never who was that. The best sex I ever had in my life is when I was most connected to my body. And when I was most connected to my body in that way, I was most connected to my hula hoop. So I know that if I would spend 20 minutes a day in my hula hoop, I will have the most delicious sex of my life. And
Yeah.
it's all that chakra system. So it's all
Mhm.
that connection within yourself. Everything just tends to work out. It
Yeah.
all
I
tends to
mean,
work out.
this is our receiver, like our vessel.
Yeah.
And I feel like if the spirit, the soul doesn't have a vessel, right? That's able to receive it, that's going to impact everything else that's happening, what
Yes.
we're transmitting out there to the world. And yeah, ooh. I want to know, like, since I know we're getting close to the end of our time together, is there anything that you might want to say that have people maybe people are going through a journey like this, maybe they know somebody that's going through a journey like this, is there anything that you would want to say or share with them?
I think the first thing that I would say is don't pretend like nothing's going on. I think the riskiest thing you can do is to put on a brave face and ask your body to hold all that fear and hold all of those emotions in so that you can pretend like everything is fine. I think the safest thing you can do is actually experience that experience and feel those feelings and move them through. Move them through
Mm,
however you move them through, but move them through and don't deny yourself the experience of actually feeling what you're going through.
yeah, yeah, thank you for that. And is there anything that you might point people to, since I know you're going live in the mornings and all of that. So can
Oh
you just
gosh.
talk a little bit about like your business and how people can stay connected with you?
Yeah, I would love you guys to stay connected. I have a group called The Magic of Being You here on Facebook. I would love for you guys to join. Amy S. Wallace on Instagram and on Facebook and on my website. All of it's Amy S. Wallace. I have a lot of things I'm about to launch, lots of things in the works right now. But right now we're meeting every morning, 6:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. The recordings are there. It's all about waking up with intention and purpose,
Mm,
saying good morning to your body, and really starting your day inside your body, starting your day
mm,
intentionally on purpose. So a little movement, a little meditation, a little breath work.
I love it.
Yeah, I
I
love
love
it too.
And
I
then
love it.
couples work with you as well, since I know you have the wedding side of your business. And I think you work with couples like leading up to
Yeah,
their wedding as well, right?
I do relationship coaching, I do dating coaching. So like I mentioned earlier, if you're in a relationship, I love to work with couples. Actually, my partner and I work with couples together on sacred connections and lots of tools on sacred connection and sacred relationships. And also if you're seeking one, so we have the divine masculine and divine feminine aspects of that we blend together so that you can kind of look at him from both
Mm,
perspectives. It's really
yeah.
helpful to have him because it allows both of those perspectives. So I can
Yeah,
speak from my perspective, but sometimes that's not as helpful as to hear what a man's perspective is. I know you understand that. So
fully.
we've
Yeah,
been
it's a
partnering on
really
that.
beautiful partnership. I feel like you really called him in a big way, but I think you're right. I think you did it from within you.
Yeah, I did. I sure did.
Whew.
That was amazing.
I feel like I can ask you questions easily all afternoon because I feel like this is such a big story that I feel like there's so many things and I'm like, man, this hour just flew by. And then
Yeah.
there's a documentary that's been made about that time in your life that we talked about today. What is that called? Like, do you know where we might find it?
She's made it impossible to find, so I don't even know where you could find it. Her name is Linda Eastburn, but
But it's not
I've
on like a platform yet. We can, I mean, we never know. Maybe it'll come,
yeah.
things will change, there's always new stuff being added. Do you know the name of it?
I can't, you know what? I can't remember the name of it. Isn't that funny? I blocked it out. It was such an interesting experience with her that I was like,
Really?
I blocked it out. And I'm like, you know what? That my story's not meant to be told that way. It was a really controlling,
Okay.
strange
Oh,
thing.
so it was not like, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like that just seems like a dream, but it doesn't sound like it was with
It
this.
was a dream, but it didn't end that way. It didn't end that way. So, and that's okay because that just really gives me things like this to be like my story's meant to be told in a really authentic way, and it
Yeah.
was really being contrite a little bit,
Mm.
so to serve someone else's purpose,
Yeah.
which
Okay.
it'll never go anywhere that way. So,
Well, I'm glad that you were able to come here today and tell it in the
me
way
too.
that you wanted it to be told. And honestly, thank you so much. Like, thank you for reaching out, for being like, I know that I'm one of those people that have risen from the ashes. So thank you very much for just being so open and honest and sharing so much of yourself with us today. I appreciate
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you.
So I'll make sure that I put your links and places to at least like have people connect to you and find
Awesome.
you. And thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you
Thank
next time.
you.